Hi everybody, this is Miss Lewis. I hope everybody is well and safe. I am reading today from a book called Jump at the Sun Treasury. This book has multiple stories in it, but the story that I am going to read is called A Big Spooky House. And I chose this story because this was a story that I read to my kids when they were younger and they really enjoyed it, and I hope that you enjoy it as well. Once there was a man. He was a big man. He was a strong man, and he knew it. He went around picking fights with people just because he knew he would win. He never walked away from trouble because he figured he could always battle his way out of it. One day, the people of his village told him that the army needed volunteers. "Since you are a big, strong man," one of the ladies told him, "and you love to fight, you ought to see if you can fight in the army." He thought about that for a minute, and then he said, "Yeah." He put his belongings on his back and started down the road. One of the neighbors hollered after him, "Hey, it's a long walk. Do you want me to give you a ride in my cart?" He was a big man. He was a strong man. He said, "I'll walk." As he was going across the countryside, he saw an inn. The innkeeper said, "Hey, it's going to rain this evening. Why don't you stop and stay in my inn for the night?" He was a big man. He was a strong man. He said, "I don't care if I get wet." He walked until the sun went down. As soon as the sky was dark, there was an incredible peal of thunder. Boom! The skies opened and the rain fell down in sheets. He was a big man. He was a strong man. He was a wet man, and he didn't like it one bit. He was looking around, trying to find someplace dry, when in a flash of lightning, he saw a big, spooky house up on a hill. Now, most people would have stayed away from that house. It was dark, and the gate was falling down. The windows were broken, and the paint was peeling. There were holes in the roof and weeds growing all around the yard. Most people would have stayed away, but not him. He was a big man. He was a strong man. He was not going to be scared of some spooky house sitting up on a big spooky hill kind of man. He went up to the door. When he reached out for the doorknob, the door opened all by itself. Now, most people would have left then and there, but not him. He was a big man. He was a strong man. He went straight in. Outside, the place was falling apart, but inside it was beautiful. There was a red carpet on the floor leading down a long hallway. Even though the windows were dark outside, there were candles burning in all of the candle holders. He looked around at the beautiful, dry, warm hallway and said, "Yeah." He followed the red carpet to the end of the hallway. There was a huge wooden door. He reached out to open it, but it opened by itself. Now, most people might have been more than just a little frightened by this, but not him. He was a big man. He was a strong man. He went right into the room. There was a fire with crackling logs. There was a huge stuffed chair facing the fire. In front of the chair was a table covered with lots of good things to eat. He just looked at everything and said, "Yeah." Now, some people would have been too terrified to eat, but not him. He was a big man. He was a strong man. He sat down and got to work. He had that table clear in no time. When he finished, he sat back and put his feet up on a little stool. When he opened his eyes, the table had disappeared. He looked around and said, "Yeah." He fell asleep in front of the fire, fast asleep in that big comfortable chair until the clock on the wall began to chime. Bong, bong, bong. It chimed 12 times. The man jumped up and said, "What? What?" "Oh, it's just the clock." The door behind him opened, and in came a little black cat. Its fur was matted and dirty. Its eyes were as red as the fire. It came across the floor, scraping its claws across the wood. Its voice was thin and squeaky. When it meowed, it walked over to the fireplace, jumped into the middle of the flames, picked up a flaming hot coal, and started to lick it. Then it looked straight at the man and said in a slow, screechy voice, "Are you going to be here when John gets here?" He's a big man. He's a strong man. He was not going to be scared by any cat sitting in a fireplace licking on any cold kind of man. He stared into the fireplace and said, "I'll be here when John gets here, and past that." He snapped his fingers to prove he didn't care. He sat back in his chair and went back to sleep. Boom! The clock struck 1. The man sat up. "What?" "Oh, it's just the clock." The door behind him opened, and in came another black cat. This one was the size of a Doberman Pinscher. It had black matted fur and fiery red eyes, just like the other one. Its voice was deep and snarly. It walked over to the fireplace, sat next to the other cat, picked up a log, bit off the end, and sat there crunching noisily. It looked out at the man and said in a slow, snarly voice, "Are you going to be here when John gets here?" He was a big man. He was a strong man. He was a worried man. But he'd never run from anything in his life, and he wasn't about to start now. So he looked straight at the great cat and said, "I'll be here when John gets here, and past that." He snapped his fingers to prove he didn't care. He looked around at the shadows of the room and then added, "And I'm not scared." He sat back in the chair, and truth be told, it took him quite a while to go back to sleep. Boom, boom. The clock struck 2. The man sat up. What? "Oh, it's just the clock." The door behind him opened, and in came another black cat. This one was the size of a large pony. Its hair was thick and matted with straw and sticks. Its eyes were bright red, and they were so big they gave out their own light. Its voice was deep, loud, and gravelly. He walked over to the fireplace and ate up the other 2 cats, licked the fireplace clean, and then turned those glowing red eyes back toward that man. It opened its mouth to show 2 rows of long, needle-sharp teeth. Then it said to the man in a slow, deep, gravelly voice, "Are you going to be here when John gets here?" What do you think? Do you think he's going to be there when John gets there? He was a big man. He was a strong man. He was a gone man. Where do you think the big strong man went? I want you to discuss with your family or your parents or your siblings, where did John go? I hope you enjoyed that story. Again, it was called A Big Spooky House, and it is in a series of books called Jump at the Sun Treasury. I hope to see you all soon.